Hey, and thanks for watching. On one of our recent events, Henry and I were talking about really kind of scaling up and lifting the bar and how to raise the bar for your product teams. And I think it was a really interesting discussion. I really hope you enjoy it.
But yeah, let's kick off this week. Obviously we're talking about scaling product teams broadly. I think one topic that Ross and I discussed, I know Ross has come up in a lot of conversations you've had that I'd like to learn more about as well, is people talk about sort of raising the bar with their teams, right? Every product leader wants product people who are performing better in their organization. So I suppose first question from my side is, when you talk about raising the bar, it's like, well, like, what is the bar and where is it? So, we'll come on to something called the product scorecard that you've developed, but what do you mean by measuring when you talk about product teams? Like, how do you measure product teams?
I love this question. Thanks, dude. That's teeing me up. Great. So what I mean by that is over the years, I've been engaged with it, and now together we've been engaged with loads and loads of product leaders who let's just take the example we gave of the last 2 years. So they may go, hey, let's think of something specifically that we may have heard of recently, like I've just hired 10 new product managers because we know we need them. But hey, I'm a CPO, I'm the product leader, or head of product, whatever I'm busy with. And I don't know whether the product team is actually great, whether they're scaling that way, how we measure them. Also, I've been in large organizations where, like last week, and this is a personal kind of bugbear of mine, but last week we were project managers, now we're product managers, or even worse, companies that think they're doing product and they're not really sure.
Yeah.
And my big personal kind of pet hate there is if you aren't measuring things well and you're taking a proper audit of where you are, you're just going to be defaulting to delivery. And what I mean by that is, if we think about managing up, say, to your senior leadership team, they will think, okay, cool, we used to do project management, or we do product management, that's cool. How are we delivering? What's the roadmap? What are we doing there? A lot of them are not aware, because they're not practitioners like us, all the things that go into it. It could be, how do we improve our communication internally or externally? How closely are we working with go-to-market, if it's an external facing tool? If it's an internal facing tool, are we getting feedback from our stakeholders? Are they giving us any feedback? Are we getting forms, for example, regularly to say, hey, this is going really well? Do an internal NPS, if you will. Those are some of the things. And there are some companies that do this. Most of the companies I've worked with and that I'm seeing recently are running ahead like headless chickens, because they kind of...
Sorry to jump in on that. Also, feel free, if anyone listening, feel free to start posting questions. We'll come on to it in sort of 5-10 minutes. So sorry to recap that. So essentially, like, we want a way to measure product teams that goes beyond, and I suppose that's why a lot of leaders default to Scrum, right? It's like, okay, if we can measure velocity, that just gives us something to sort of benchmark. And I'm sure people aren't stupid, right? They're aware that it's not just about delivering. Well, some people delivering as many features as possible, but it's like, okay, well, it's the only way that we have to benchmark. So let's just do that. So you're saying actually we want to find a holistic way to measure the success of product teams based on obviously also the kind of things that are important at any one time.
Yeah, 100% saying it. Just to put it in context, I once launched an incredibly successful product, which I talk about relatively often. And then I was, promoted to my level of incompetence, as they say, where I was the chief product officer of this $1 billion turnover product, but essentially I have 32 people to manage directly and indirectly. And the one thing that I'd like everybody to hear is I didn't have any Scrum Masters. I didn't have anybody telling me which way to manage my sprints in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, or even manage sprints. But that was because I was able to measure where we were, communicate that very effectively up, and communicate it down. Where were we with all the teams, right? Now, in order to do that, you got to have great teams that are super engaged. And the problem with us in product is a lot of the time we don't choose our teams, we just inherit them. Yeah. But there are ways that we can manage that. So that's exactly what I'm saying. And I think a lot of the times we will either default to or take sometimes a lead from, or let's put it in a negative way, get bullied by, and I'm not saying we do, but I'm just trying to be dramatic here, get bullied by some agile coaches are telling us we're not doing it right. And what I want to tell you is, if you take ownership of measuring things and auditing and do them properly, you shouldn't care at all. And I don't, what agile people are telling me in the organization.